After months of speculation about her fleeing to Portugal to escape scandal and shame, Ferguson has made a stark reversal. She's staying. And not just anywhere, but in Beatrice's newly renovated annex. Once a duchess with her own place in royal tradition, Ferguson is now without formal status, official duties, or even a royal residence. Her new living situation marks a dramatic fall from grace, but also a calculated step closer to power, even if it comes through the side door. If you love getting the real story behind the palace walls, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. By embedding herself near Beatrice, Ferguson may be attempting to reset her image and regain footing inside the royal ecosystem. But insiders suggest this isn't entirely her move. With fears mounting over her rumored U.S. interview and the palace's desire to prevent damaging disclosures, relocating Ferguson might be less about comfort and more about control. The proximity grants her visibility, but also surveillance. Whether this arrangement helps stabilize Ferguson or further exposes royal fractures remains to be seen, but its implications for the monarchy's internal dynamics are unmistakably. Sarah Ferguson just flipped the royal script again, this time with a move no one saw coming. For months, it looked like she was packing up for Portugal, setting her sights on a clean break from the palace drama and the wreckage left behind by Prince Andrew's spectacular fall from grace. But instead of heading for the exit, she's doubled back, hard, and now she's landing right in Princess Beatrice's backyard. Literally. The annex at Beatrice's Cotswolds estate, recently renovated, propane deliveries and all, is reportedly where Sarah Ferguson is settling next. Not a holiday visit, not a pit stop, a full-on relocation. And it's not just about where she's living, it's about why. Because this isn't just a shift in geography. It's a strategic pivot, and one that says more about the current state of royal fractures than any Buckingham Palace press release ever could. If you love getting the real story behind the palace walls, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. Let's start with the context. Sarah Ferguson, once the Duchess of York, is no longer formal royal. She hasn't been since her divorce from Prince Andrew in 1996. But for years, she remained closely linked to the family, thanks mostly to a bizarrely enduring alliance with Andrew. They continued living together at Royal Lodge. They took holidays together. She publicly supported him even when the rest of the royal family froze him out. But now, that partnership is breaking down. And it's not subtle. Sources say the relationship between Ferguson and Andrew is deteriorating fast. He's angry, withdrawn, and reportedly creating distance. She, in turn, has been described as emotionally shaken, drinking heavily, and pulling away from the dynamic that defined her post-divorce existence. The mutual loyalty that held them together through scandal after scandal appears to be gone. And without Andrew, Ferguson's access, her place in the royal narrative, becomes a lot more precarious. That's where Beatrice comes in. Beatrice has always been the most carefully managed royal of her generation. Quiet, responsible, drama-free. She's not a working royal, but she's close enough to the institution to matter, and distant enough to avoid the chaos that's consumed others. By aligning herself with Beatrice, Ferguson isn't just finding a roof over her head. She's re-establishing proximity, a physical closeness to the royal core. And that proximity? It's currency. Because Ferguson isn't just a private citizen trying to live out of the spotlight. She's still very much part of the wider royal conversation, especially when she's associated with one of the most toxic chapters in modern royal history, the Epstein scandal. Let's not sugarcoat this. Ferguson's name has come up more than once in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. While she hasn't been accused of wrongdoing, leaked emails and public comments have linked her to the disgraced financier through her relationship with Andrew. She's spoken about it. She's tried to minimize it. But the association sticks. And in today's hyper-scrutinized media climate, her presence is a liability the palace can't ignore. So why isn't she being cut off completely? Because silence is risky. But distance? That's even riskier. Reports suggest Ferguson is now weighing the idea of a major interview, a U.S. media appearance. Big network, big money, bigger risk, a chance to tell her side. And if she does, it could be catastrophic, not just for her, but for the monarchy itself. The palace's strategy here seems clear. Containment. Let her move into Beatrice's estate. Keep her close. Quietly observe. maybe even influence. But don't give her enough of a reason to go rogue. It's a PR balancing act. Too much pressure, and she explodes. Too little, and she disappears, only to resurface on international television with receipts. Her track record isn't reassuring. Ferguson has a history of speaking too freely, saying too much, and veering off message. She's done it in interviews. She's done it in books. She's done it on camera. The idea that she could hold back in a tell-all? A long shot. The risk of further implicating Andrew or revealing uncomfortable truths about how the palace handled a scandal is very real. And that's a nightmare scenario the royal family wants to avoid at all costs. That's also why this move to Beatrice's home isn't just a mother-daughter arrangement. It's strategic positioning on all sides. Ferguson stays relevant. The palace stays informed. And Beatrice? She becomes an unwitting middleman in a delicate operation that's as much about optics as it is about logistics. But Beatrice's involvement complicates things. She's long been considered a neutral player in the royal game. She's managed to avoid drama, maintain a respectful distance from scandal, and quietly support the institution without drawing much attention. That neutrality is now in jeopardy. Hosting Ferguson, especially during a time when tensions are so high, puts Beatrice closer to flame. If things go south, if Ferguson does speak out or step out of line, Beatrice's name will inevitably get pulled into the chaos. The pressure on all sides is intensifying. Ferguson, stripped of a support system, is scrambling to find stability and purpose. Andrew is reportedly spiraling further into bitterness and isolation. And the palace is walking a razor's edge between risk management and damage control. It's a power shuffle, and Ferguson's not hiding from it. She's embracing it. Her choice to stay in the UK, rather than vanish into the background in Portugal, tells us exactly where her head's at. She's not trying to disappear. She's trying to stay in the mix. She wants to be seen. She wants to be part of the narrative, even if that means existing on the outermost edge of royal relevance. But visibility comes with consequences. The royal family has spent the last several years in damage control mode. From Andrew to Meghan to internal fractures, no press strategy could fully hide. The last thing they need now is another unpredictable voice with insider access deciding it's time to speak. And that's a gamble. Because right now, Ferguson holds more power than anyone seems willing to acknowledge. Not because she's popular, not because she's well-positioned, but because she knows things. Because she was there. Because for decades, she saw it all, heard it all, and stayed just close enough to keep people guessing. Her silence, so far, has been interpreted as restraint. But what if it's not? What if it's just the calm before the storm? That's what makes this moment so volatile. Ferguson has nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. A media appearance could give her validation, vindication, even money. It could be her final act in the royal soap opera, or the beginning of a whole new one. And the monarchy? They are cornered. They can't bring her back in. They can't push her too far out. They can only watch and wait, and hope that keeping her in the Cotswold will be enough to keep the lid on the box. Whether that works remains to be seen. But one thing is clear. Sarah Ferguson's story isn't over. And whatever she does next won't be subtle, won't be quiet, and won't be easy for the royals to ignore. If you're still following this royal drama unfold twist by twist, make sure to like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss a single headline. Because with Ferguson back in play, things are only going to get messier. The decision by Sarah Ferguson to plant herself back within the royal orbit, at Beatrice's Cotswold estate no less, isn't just news. It's a statement. A deliberate, public-facing move that says, I'm still here. I still matter. And it's landed with a kind of quiet thud that sends shockwaves through palace corridors. For months, headlines hinted at a self-imposed exile. Portugal was the plan. A graceful, if not strategic, exit from the wreckage left behind by Prince Andrew's downfall. After all, Ferguson's proximity to him had turned toxic. He's lost everything. His military titles, his honorary positions, even his Her Royal Highness styling. His role in royal life has been erased. But Ferguson, she was always harder to write off. Because even when her titles were gone, her presence never was. But now that fragile, behind-the-scenes understanding between Sarah and the palace appears to be cracking. Hard, Instead of retreating to the background, she's embedded herself even deeper, this time through Beatrice, who's arguably the most discreet and least controversial royal in the family's younger generation. Her estate, her annex, and her renovations are now hosting one of the royal family's most unpredictable, emotionally volatile figures. And that makes Beatrice, willing or not, a player in this latest Windsor chess match. Because Ferguson isn't just seeking shelter. She's seeking relevance. And that's what makes this U-turn so unsettling for the palace. She could have quietly vanished. She could have kept a low profile abroad. But she didn't. She stayed. She moved in closer. And now, she's hovering just outside the line of official engagement. Not royal, but not entirely separate. Not included, but not dismissed. And that middle ground, it's dangerous. Because Sarah Ferguson is unpredictable. Historically, that's been both a downfall and her appeal. From the toe-sucking scandal to the cash for access sting, she's made a habit of doing the exact opposite of what the palace wants. She doesn't handle pressure like a Windsor. She handles it like a woman who's been publicly burned more times than she can count, and still believes she has a right to be heard. That's what the palace fears most. Not another scandal, but another interview. And that fear isn't unfounded. Ferguson has been reportedly exploring a media appearance in the United States. One of those glossy, soft-focused sit-downs where she tells her side, sheds a few tears, and reclaims her story for the public. The problem? Her story is tangled with one of the most damaging royal scandals of the last 50 years. And if she decides to speak candidly about it, the damage could spiral. Let's be clear, her association with Jeffrey Epstein is already a problem. Even if indirect, even if secondhand, it's there. Emails, photographs, awkward sound bites. It all adds up to an optics disaster waiting to happen. And the royal family knows how fast those optics can spread. They also know Ferguson doesn't play by palace rules. She talks too much. She overshares. She cries on camera. She tells stories that weren't supposed to leave the dining room. That unpredictability makes her impossible to script, and therefore impossible to trust. Which brings us back to the Cotswolds. Beatrice's estate may look like a countryside haven, but it's functioning as something else entirely. It's the new Windsor Watchtower, a way for the palace to keep tabs on Ferguson without having to bring her into the fold. She's not at Royal Lodge. She's not on palace grounds. But she's close enough to monitor, close enough to manage. And that strategy, it's classic containment. They are hoping that by giving her just enough space, shelter, a link to the family, she won't feel the need to go rogue. They are betting that the appearance of inclusion will calm her, that being within arm's reach will make her feel seen. But that bet comes with risk. Because if Ferguson is only being tolerated and she knows it, the whole thing could backfire. There's already strain. Her long-time partnership with Andrew appears to be disintegrating, and that alone is monumental. Their post-divorce relationship was famously close, almost too close. They vacationed together, lived together, raised their daughters in harmony. But now, sources say that Andrew is angry at her, at the situation, at everything. And Ferguson, she's not handling it well. Reports of heavy drinking and emotional withdrawal suggest she's spiraling. Stripped of her royal perks, her social alliances, and her public role, she's facing the kind of identity collapse most royals never have to reckon with. For decades, she's defined herself by a proximity to power, and now that proximity is slipping away. So her move to Beatrice's home isn't a reset. It's a reaction, a pivot born out of urgency. Because when all else is lost, proximity becomes the only currency that matters. And Beatrice, while deeply loyal to her mother, is now caught in the middle. She's the bridge between Ferguson and the institution. Her estate is now functioning as a buffer zone. And if Ferguson does decide to speak out, whether in an interview, a book, or a spontaneous media rant, it's not just her reputation on the line. Beatrice's name will be right there beside hers. The palace knows this, which is why they are not issuing statements, not drawing attention. They are letting the arrangement speak for itself. But make no mistake, they are watching every... Because this isn't just about Sarah Ferguson anymore. It's about control, narrative, reputation, the survival of a royal brand that's been hammered by scandal, infighting, and public exhaustion. And in the middle of all that, Sarah boxed into an annex, simmering in silence, holding on to stories she may or may not be ready to tell. If she keeps quiet, she fades out. If she speaks, she reclaims relevance. But at what cost? The monarchy is hoping she won't take the bait, that the propane tanks, countryside views, and proximity to Beatrice will be enough to pacify her. But history suggests otherwise. Ferguson has never been content with silence, and when the spotlight calls, she tends to answer. So we're left with a standoff, the Duchess in exile, the daughter in the middle, and the institution clinging to control. Will Sarah Ferguson go public? Will she hold the line? Will the palace make its move before she makes hers? Whatever happens next, it won't be quiet, and it definitely won't be clean. The Duchess is back, but not where anyone expected her to be, and definitely not how the palace would have preferred. Sarah Ferguson has re-emerged right on the edge of royal life, not with a bang, but with something far more dangerous, a quiet recalibration. Her move to Princess Beatrice's estate isn't dramatic on the surface. There's no press statement, no splashy tabloid photos, no grand arrival. But it is a message, a subtle, unmistakable signal that Ferguson hasn't bowed out, backed off, or been silenced. She's just repositioned. And now, she's doing what the royals fear most, watching, waiting, and possibly preparing to speak. Let's talk about the real tension here. This isn't just about a former duchess needing a place to stay. It's about optics. Sarah Ferguson moving into a daughter's countryside annex while headlines still haven't faded from the Epstein scandal? That's not nothing. That's a PR nightmare waiting to... It's also a sign of just how frayed things have become behind palace walls. Once upon a time, Ferguson was tolerated as Andrew's ever-loyal ex-wife. She stuck by him when no one else would. They lived together, leaned on each other, and presented an odd sort of united front, even as their relevance slipped. But now, that alliance appears to be collapsing, and fast. According to sources, Andrew's anger has become impossible to ignore. The man once infamous for his arrogance and entitlement is reportedly spiraling, angry, defensive, and emotionally distant. And Ferguson, she's on the receiving end of it. Their dynamic, once strangely durable, is splintering under the weight of disgrace. Gone are the mutual vacations and public photo ops. What remains is tension, resentment, and isolation. Ferguson, always more emotionally transparent than the rest of the Windsor set, is reportedly not coping well. She's said to be drinking heavily, keeping her distance from Andrew, and grappling with the reality that her post-divorce royal safety net has finally unraveled. Which brings us back to the Cotswolds. Moving in with Beatrice, or at least onto her property, is Ferguson's only play left. And it's a smart one, because Beatrice, with her unblemished public image and carefully curated privacy, offers cover. She's one of the few royal figures still viewed positively by both the public and the institution. And for Ferguson, that proximity is gold. Beatrice becomes her buffer, her anchor, her last remaining link to the royal fold. But let's not pretend this is comfortable for everyone involved. Beatrice, who has spent years avoiding scandal and playing a quiet game, is now shouldering a delicate responsibility. Hosting her mother may be born out of love, but it also comes with risk. If Ferguson steps out of line, Beatrice gets pulled into the narrative, whether she wants to or not. And the palace? They are not thrilled, but they are also not stopping it, because this arrangement, inconvenient as it is, serves their purposes too. Sarah Ferguson under their noses is better than Sarah Ferguson abroad, off the grid, and answering calls from American media networks. Keeping her within reach allows for damage control, containment, and the possibility of influence. It's the royal equivalent of house arrest with a countryside view. But everyone knows it's temporary. A bandage, not a solution. Because Ferguson still holds the one thing that truly worries them, her voice. Her history of oversharing is legendary. She doesn't do guarded. She doesn't toe the line. She talks. Sometimes too much. Sometimes just enough to start fires. And right now, with her position more uncertain than ever, the temptation to take back control, on her terms, has probably never felt stronger. Enter the whispers of a U.S. interview. A major tell-all, reportedly in development, that would allow Ferguson to finally clear the air and, more importantly, reclaim her story. The royal family has seen this playbook before, and it rarely ends well. This wouldn't just be another headline. This would be nuclear. The Epstein connection, still raw and unresolved in the court of public opinion, is one of the monarchy's most radioactive issues. Andrew's forced retreat from public life didn't close the book, it just made it quieter. And if Ferguson chooses to reopen it, all bets are off. Even if she avoids specifics, even if she sidesteps direct accusations, just being Sarah Ferguson, tied to Andrew, tied to Epstein by way of association, is enough to reignite the story. And let's be honest, she's not known for restraint, especially not when there's a camera, a sympathetic interviewer, and a chance to recast herself as misunderstood and maligned. The palace, of course, knows this, and that's why this Cotswolds move is being treated so carefully. They are hoping proximity equals pacification, that if Ferguson feels close enough to be included, she won't feel the need to explode. But the cracks are already visible. The relationship with Andrew, severed. Her standing within the royal institution, gone. What she does have is access, visibility, and a deep understanding of how much a single story can shape public perception. So, does she go there? Does she light the match? The palace is banking on no. That the annex, the country air, the quiet companionship of her daughter will be enough to keep her still. That maybe, just maybe, she'll choose dignity over drama. But Ferguson doesn't do quiet retirements. She's been clinging to public relevance for decades, often through scandal, sometimes through reinvention, and always through visibility. She wants to be heard. She wants to be seen. And when someone like Sarah Ferguson wants to be seen, especially after being pushed to the sidelines for years, there's no guarantee she'll keep the peace. So what happens next? Maybe she does the interview. Maybe she holds back. Maybe the palace offers her something behind the scenes to stay silent. Money, access, a nod of respect. Or maybe she waits until she's pushed just far enough to say, why not? Whatever the outcome, it's clear this is no longer just about a move. It's about leverage, about loyalty, tested and broken, about a woman who spent decades surviving inside a system that never fully accepted her, and now, when cornered, might finally decide to speak. And if she does, she won't just be telling her story. She'll be opening the door to one of the monarchy's most tightly held vaults, and once it's open, it won't close easily. So if you're still following this slow burn of royal dysfunction, go ahead and like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more breakdowns of public meltdowns, royal fallout, and PR disasters that just won't quit. Because Sarah Ferguson hasn't said her final word, and the royal family knows it.